Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Leverton Review, the YouTube channel where I attempt to be the most prolific reviewer of all time by reviewing literally everything. Of course, that's a joke. You can't literally review everything, that's impossible. Probably. um, but on this channel, I review books, movies, plays, podcasts, and I have different series. This, my friends, is Marvel Mayhem, where I review literally everything Marvel has produced in terms of television and movies and cartoons. That's not an exaggeration. That's really what I'm doing. A ridiculous side quest. Today, we're taking on together, viewer, because we're in this together. We're taking on the 2024 movie called Madame Web. And I watched this with my son maybe about 2 months ago, and I was taking notes. So I've summarized the notes that we took that day, and I'm going to try and expand upon the notes. As a YouTuber, you're not supposed to mention the fact that you're using a script, but people do use scripts. I don't want to blow your mind. This is not a script. I'm literally going to be reading from my notes. All right, I need to be able to see my notes at the same time the recording is going on. All right, here are our early impressions of the film Madam Web from 2024, starring Dakota Fanning and the guy from Parks and Recs. The movie in the beginning seems confusing and poorly written. We thought that the plot was connected to time travel or time slipping, and after 18 minutes, we still weren't sure what the characters were about or the protagonist's powers. Casey, Madam Web, appears unlikable and emotionally distant, and she may have spider related powers that she inherited from her mother. And we eventually discovered that her powers involved visions or seeing future events repeatedly, so she could go back in the present and try and change things so that future outcome doesn't happen. There's a villain named Slims who is connected to Casey's mother's death 3 decades previously. And he doesn't age in those 30 years. He looks exactly the same age. He has these visions of these three women with spider based powers who defeat him, and so he decides that he needs to kill them. Well, actually, he thinks they're going to kill him, so he wants to kill them before they kill him. And I don't know why he takes the spider visions so seriously, but he does. And the movie is set in 2003, but there's lots of things about the movie that don't make sense if it's set in 2003 connected to the technology. I don't remember specifically what I was referring to, but I'm sure there's something like that. And the reason it's set in 2003 is because then it can be connected to the Peter Parker narrative because her partner Ben is a paramedic. That's the Parks and Rec guy. That's Uncle Ben. So there's a big deal about, and I don't know why this happens, but so Ben and his wife are invited to the baby shower, or I don't know, some kind of party connected to the baby. And the baby is going to be Peter Parker, but Casey Webb is there. Or I don't know if her name is Casey Webb, but Casey is there. And it doesn't make any sense because why would you invite your coworker to the baby shower of your sister in law? I guess, unless they're friends, so it would make sense that they would have been invited, but not in this movie. Um, Here are the major criticisms of the film. There's excessive exposition instead of storytelling. There's weak dialogue and inconsistent behavior from the characters. And there's confusing motivations and awkward plot developments. And there's this one point where it's clearly Pepsi product placement. And I have kind of complicated feelings about product placement because I can understand that we live in a world where we're surrounded by products. So if someone is drinking something in real life, it's going to be some brand of something. So it would make sense in movies also that you see those brands, but generally, if you see Pepsi, you never see Coke, and vice versa. So this was pretty obvious. It was like, ooh, I'm drinking this. They didn't actually stop, but it kind of felt like Wayne's World kind of thing. Um, yeah, so as I said, the 2003 setting doesn't make any sense for a movie that came out in 2024. Um, so if we talk about the the actual plot of the movie, it's not that interesting. So Casey experiences these repeated visions and attempts to prevent deaths because of these visions. And there is like this moment where a pigeon crashes into a window and it becomes this sort of like time loop event. She rescues the three girls in question from the villain because she foresaw this danger. And then she stole a taxi for some reason and then drove them into the middle of the woods and told them to stay there because they would be protected. But one, why would you go into the middle of the woods? Two, why would you leave the girls there? And three, why would you continue to drive this stolen vehicle? Because she drives it back into New York and she parks it in front of her apartment and then she uses it again. Uh, it's so crazy. So the characters later disappear. The girls later disappear because they ignore her instructions. Because why would you follow the lead of somebody who randomly saves you from somebody else? And I don't understand why they don't go to the police. They have their reasons, I guess. So the teenage girls are hostile towards each other, but they don't actually have any meaningful development. Like they just hate each other right from the beginning. They don't really have any conversation. It's just like they're fighting after 5 minutes, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the conversations in this movie often feel unnatural or nonsensical. And Casey frequently reacts irrationally to predictable outcomes. Like the fact that they left, she really freaks out. Like, you kidnap them and you put them in the woods. Don't expect them to stay there. Um, then there's some smaller problems with the film, like the character of Slims that I mentioned before is supposed to be this tech bro billionaire, but he understands police codes. That's probably not gonna happen unless he's really interested in police work, which the movie doesn't set up. Casey's visions and deductions are poorly explained. So, she has the vision and then she does something because something else is going to happen, but it's not exactly clear how she got to that conclusion. The film alternates between boring scenes and mildly entertaining action. So, it's overly long and it drags frequently. It's entertainingly ridiculous, but not a good film. And I would say it's almost in the so bad it's good category. actually, because it's crazy. It's just a crazy, crazy film. All right, that's my review of Madam Web. I don't know what film we're at in the Marvel Mayhem series, but yeah, maybe a few more thoughts about Madam Web. So when Madam Web came out, obviously the actors did a press junket kind of promoting it, and Dakota Fanning, she kind of trashed it. She said it was like AI, if AI came up with a boyfriend's idea of the perfect movie, which I think that she was trying to make it very clever, but it's not, because this movie is nobody's idea of a perfect movie. Like, why would you think a boyfriend would be interested in the story of these four women? I'm not saying that a guy can't be interested in the story of four women if it's done well, but that comment, oh, it's so weird. I think she thought she was going to be in a film like Venom, where the critics were harsh, but the public loved it, and she ended up being in a film, Madam Web, you know. And maybe my other thought about this is like Sony and Marvel struck sort of a devil's deal with each other, because if Sony wants to keep the film rights to Spider-Man, there has to be a film every 5 years. And I think they created Venom because Venom is obviously a Spider-Man character, and it was to be this sort of like stopgap in between MCU, um, Marvel, Spider-Man movies. But it actually became, and I don't think that they thought it was going to be the hit that it was, but Tom Hardy is an amazing actor, so he really carried that movie, and it was fun. So then they were like, oh yeah, we have a hit on our hands. Maybe we can make the Spider-Man universe a thing without MCU, and we can build all of this. They had Morbius and this movie, and and Craven the Hunter, but yeah, it didn't work. And I don't think that's necessarily because of superhero fatigue. I think if you make a good movie, people will watch it. And not always. Maybe the timing of the movie is just bad and people don't actually see it at the time it comes out, but then it comes out later and people really, really love it. So yeah, Madam Web, not the greatest Marvel based film, but not entirely bad and kind of enjoyable. So it's one of those movies you could watch with your friends and start making fun of it. It's that kind of vibe. All right, what did you think about Madam Web? If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, put your thoughts in the comment section. If you like what I do, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 10, count them, 10 whole subscribers by the end of June, which I think we can do. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.